Hello, Internet. Welcome to Driving Dragons. I'm Daniel, and today we are going to return to our discussion of the 9 alignment system popularized by Dungeons & Dragons. This time, we will be diving into the lawful neutral alignment and all that it entails. While you're here, be sure to like, hype, and share the video. Leave a comment and share it with your friends. If you like what I do and want to support our car giveaway project, drop a super sticker, join up on Patreon, or sign up for a YouTube membership. Patrons and members are handling a very important task from now until the 20th of the month. From the outset, I've wanted to use this channel to restore old cars and give them away. The idea was floated on my last live stream to instead find a TTRPG creator in need and, on some rough times, and to give the car to them instead of doing like a sweepstakes style drawing that's open to everybody and anybody. So I threw it up to my supporters. If you are a paid channel member or a paid tier Patreon, there's a live poll right now. Charity or sweepstakes for what we do with the car. I actually met with my body shop guy the other day, and we discussed some of the ideas to plan out the 74 Dodge Dart. So let's go out there and vote and make this happen. Voting will end in the second hour of my November 20 live stream, where there will also be a discussion about a potential Kickstarter coming out soon on a project several of us have been working on diligently throughout the year. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about what it means to be a lawful neutral character. There is one major difference between the alignments that fall on the neutral moral axis and those that are good or evil. As I've mentioned in the past, the moral axis is how you think and feel and what drives your decision making. In lawful good or chaotic evil, the character is good or evil, just a lawful or chaotic version of good or evil. And a neutral good character or a neutral evil character is simply good or evil. Neutral morality functions in much the same way. However, moral neutrality presents in two different major ways, leading to the system really being more of a 12 alignment system than a 9 alignment system. And that's because neutral can be both a moral stance and an amoral stance. As such, a lawful neutral character thinks on a subconscious level in a long-term manner, focusing on systems and traditions. However, what the drivers of their decision-making are can lend themselves to radically different characters, even though they have the same alignment. So let's knock out that part where we define our terms. In this case, the terms would be moral and amoral. The way it is meant in this context, a morally neutral individual is one who strives for balance in all things. Dragonlance is very good at presenting this as too much good tends to lend itself to intolerance and lack of freedom, and the tyranny of the greater good, where too much evil lends itself to hedonistic self-destruction, and the tyranny of individual whim. Striving for balance is generally going to present as trying to maintain a status quo where things naturally take their course, seeking kind of a homeostatic happy medium between everything long term. In this context, an amoral individual doesn't mean a person with no morality whatsoever who does a bunch of evil stuff. I mean, a lot of times amoral and evil are the same thing, because that's frequently how it plays out. But in this case, it simply means a person who doesn't take a moral stance as a driver for their decision making. They may actually have some feelings one way or another, but when it comes to driving their decisions, it's entirely focused on the ethical nature, be it long-term, short-term, whatever it may be. In many ways, that is actually the more difficult way to play neutral, as it's kind of like sailing a ship with no oars, no rudders, and no rigging. There's nothing directing this law or this chaos. And trust me, we'll get to chaotic neutral. It becomes very easy and natural as a part of human nature to drift either into some level of altruism or selfishness, making you not really neutral anymore. When a character is lawful neutral and dedicated to balance, this becomes the judge archetype that is defined in the 3.5e Player's Handbook. They favor order and are not swayed by who is in need or what their own personal gains or losses are. In the end, the system, that being the long-term stability, is what matters and is what provides the balance that prevents the excessive altruism or the excessive hedonism. This need not be a strong central government or a particular code of laws or traditions, though it often is, but it is characterized by making decisions the same logical, systematic way every single time, using the same parameters and guidelines to create a consistent, balanced approach that can be planned on, predicted, and relied on to just be, as I said, consistent. In a way, Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight is lawful neutral, not lawful evil as Two-Face, at least not until the end of the second act of the film. This is because his obsession is about what is fair, not what's best for him or what's best for Gotham. It's about what's fair, everybody getting what they deserve. The character is actually a fun little microcosm of an alignment change in a character. He starts off lawful good. He drifts into lawful neutral, and he dies lawful evil, with Batman taking the blame to ensure that he is remembered as the former. Judge Dredd also falls into this category of lawful neutral throughout most of his publication history, and he also teaches us a lot about how the alignment works. Dredd rebels against the system in Mega City 1 on at least 3 major occasions, typically because it has somehow become corrupted to serve something other than the long-term stability of Mega City 1. The balance is more important than the law itself, even though the system, or in this case the law, is critical to that balance. Where things get dicey for our lawful neutral characters is when the neutrality takes on its amoral aspect. Luckily for me, in this video, that issue it progressively gets worse as our ethics breaks down. The two versions of lawful, the versions of chaotic neutral are radically different and all over the map and kind of hard to put together and pin down. But the two versions of lawful neutral they're almost purely semantic in their differences. They really tend to have the same kind of outcomes, even though they got to get there by different roads in most cases. The very nature of long-term ethical thinking, such as that which is native to the lawful mind, tends to favor balance, even if moral balance is not explicitly a goal. Where this kind of breaks down and shows its differences is in the margins. For instance, Judge Dredd actually challenged the system when it drifted too far one way or the other and had a negative impact on the long-term stability of Mega City 1. Had he been the amoral version of lawful neutral, he would have adopted an attitude that falls more in line with allowing the results to be wildly out of sync in terms of actual versus intended results, so long as the system itself remained intact. He may work within the system and try to slowly course correct, particularly if things got really far out of line, but he isn't going to actively rebel. Oddly enough, the comically bad Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie displays this kind of lawful immorality in his dealings with criminals who technically commit crimes as a consequence of trying to survive. Tampering with public property because you hid in a janitorial robot during a firefight to avoid getting shot. Or, just not having the proper ID because you lost it, running down the road or something. Meanwhile, the newer Dredd movie, which is far more in line with the 2000 AD character, Dredd passes Judge Anderson despite several decisions that are technically violations of the law, but which serve the greater purpose of the system that he's dedicated to. Both are lawful neutral, but the more correct Dredd is driven by that overall goal of the system, that end goal. The ends actually, the means are in service to the end, whereas the means are the end for the other Judge Dredd and for the amoral, lawful, neutral character. The lack of moral direction in this particular flavor of lawful neutral becomes hard to play in most TTRPGs because our PCs are constantly being put in situations where moral decisions are called for, and by the nature of the kinds of moral quandaries that are presented, more often than not, the amoral, lawful, neutral character very quickly becomes indistinguishable from lawful evil. A good example of the amoral, lawful, neutral mindset is the bad guy lieutenant who is serving in the Dark Lord's army, but who would probably hold a similar rank and position in the Holy Paladin Order had his village simply been on a different side of the river. The clerk in the exceptional Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode Duet comes to mind. He shows up to the station, setting himself up to be captured as a Cardassian labor camp director, every bit as cruel and evil as the camp commandant from Schindler's List. Why? So he can be executed for the crimes that man got away with, and to soothe his own guilt at what he sees as having been too cowardly to stand up against the system that he was part of. But was he? What was he? He was a filing clerk. He pushed paperwork for the military. And had he stepped 1 foot out of line, he'd have been executed. And with the way Cardassian society worked, his whole family would have been disgraced. So he served the system, and it was right and just for him to do that. And he turned a blind eye to what that system was doing to the Bajorans that were in the labor camp. It's the kind of the opposite of Two-Face. He was lawful neutral until the extent of the evil around him, along with the associated guilt, made him lawful good, growing a morality from indifference. And also, as you can see, kind of showing the quandary that comes with trying to play that immoral, lawful, neutral character. These repeated moral decisions that have to be made in-game are going to push them to be functionally lawful good or lawful evil. And yes, lawful. Everything this guy did, he did everything he could to make sure that the system remained intact, and it punished him in a right and just and righteous manner as the monster that he disguised himself as. He tried to assume that persona so that the system would punish him. He didn't go out and try and do it some other way. I hope all the examples that I've been making here haven't made this too confusing, but I feel the through lines here are what gives us a clear vision of what lawful neutral is in both of its forms. Each of these examples shows us a person who in the deepest regions of their brain understands that the systems and traditions and long-term logical consistency that exists there, it provides that consistency and the stability, and that's what matters most. The brain is logical, coldly so. The only question is where the goals of those decisions lie. To serve the system itself, or to find the best solutions overall, be they good or evil, without favoring one over the other. So what comes to mind when you think about lawful neutral characters? Tell me below. I'll see you next time.